Well, hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're making a stand for your HVLP paint gun. Now, if you're a regular viewer here on the show, you know that I'm a little bit new to the HVLP thing, but I'm really liking the results that I'm getting. However, you try to fill one of these things, and it's quite an awkward process unless you have a way to hold the gun. And what I'm finding is that I need more hands. So I thought that on today's show, it's going to be a fly by the seat of your pants kind of a deal. I'm just going to wing it, and I'm going to make a stand that will hold the HVLP gun steady for me while I'm filling the paint reservoirs. So now, it's all going to start off with some 1/2-inch thick scrap plywood. It's just a construction grade plywood. I had a bunch of it that was given to me, and I thought this would be a perfect project for this. So why don't I show you what I've got in mind to start off with. Now, I think I said this plywood is 1/2 inch thick. It's actually 3/8 of an inch. Either way, I have two pieces here, and these will be the upright sides that are going to help support my HVLP gun. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to mark a taper like what I've done on this piece. These pieces here measure 9 inches wide, they're 14 inches long, and from one corner I'm going to measure out 5 inches. And then from that mark there at 5 inches, we're just going to bring a taper down right to the corner. I'm not going to cut it just yet because I want to do a little bit of layout here. But there we go. That will be the taper that we will eventually cut there. The next thing that I'd like to do is I need to work on the base. So for the base, I'm going to want a piece of the same plywood that is 9 inches by 9 inches. And that's that cut. Now my thought process here is that I want to cut some dados in the base that will house these uprights, kind of like this, one on each side, and the HVLP gun will sit right here in the middle. But I guess the question is, how far apart do you need the dados? And for that, all you need to do is just take your HVLP gun. You need it wide enough for the maximum size of your container here. So in this case, the lid on this one is just over 4 inches long. So if I give myself 7 inches of room in between our two uprights, that will be absolutely plenty of space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to the table saw, and leaving 7 inches between the dados, I will cut a dado that is 3/16 of an inch deep to house our side uprights of plywood. And by making multiple passes like that and sneaking up on the measurement, even without a dado blade, we're able to get a nice snug fit that will work for our project. There we go. Give it a little bit of encouragement with a whackometer. All right, so there is our uprights. Now, again, we still haven't cut that taper, but we're not too concerned. What we need is, at some point in time here in this upright, we need a platform across here that will hold our HVLP reservoir, our paint reservoir. We'll hold the gun upright like that so that it is going to make it so that we don't have to hold it. So what I need to do at this point is I need to get a measurement somewhere down partway up on this taper here to be able to cut a hole in another piece of this ply. So what we want to do, we're going to end up dadoing that side piece in here. So we'll make our piece 7 3/8 by, you know what, let's make it square. 7 3/8 by 7 3/8. Let me get that piece cut. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is from my front edge here, I'm going to come in 2 inches and just place a mark there. As well, I'm going to place a center mark here on our board, which will be right there. And then from that center line, I want to come out 3/4 of an inch from each side. Just place a mark there and a mark there, and we will square it off. We will bring that line up to this line right here that we just placed at 2 inches up. And using our center line on that line that's 2 inch up from the bottom, we are going to draw a 2-inch diameter circle. Just like that. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to take this over to the scroll saw. I'm going to cut out this square section here and get rid of it. Then I'm going to tilt my blade 2 degrees, maybe 3, and cut around this perimeter to give us a tapered hole for our paint reservoir to sit in. And with that little kind of a keyhole cutout, you'll be able to slide your gun in just like that and have it sit there. Now you'll see that it sort of sits crooked, but we will address that a little later. For now, what we need to do is we're going to need some dados in our uprights going horizontally across to be able to house this one piece of plywood. So 5.5 inches up from the bottom of our uprights, we are going to place a dado 3/8 of an inch wide and 3/16 of an inch deep. So with this dry fit, we can place the gun in here, but honestly, I really don't like the way it sits in there. It's too far forward. I really want it back this way more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide it like I just did. We're going to mark where it is that I want that to sit. And once I get it the way that I want it, I'm going to mark it and cut this off to length. The way it stands right now, it looks like I need to cut about 2 3/8 off of the one end to make it fit the way that I'd like. So let me get that cut, and then we'll deal with some other issues that I see that are happening here. Okay, I think I have this position now the way that I like it in this little stand. However, I don't like this. I don't like the fact that this male end of our pneumatic system or of our air hose is touching on this ply. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut probably about a 1 inch to 1.5 inch wide gap, probably about 2.5 inches in. I'm going to cut it in here to give this room to hang down freely so that our air hose can hang down. Now that will cause us a problem where this is now going to tip and make our reservoir crooked. But again, I'm going to deal with that as soon as I get this notch cut out. And with that notch cut out, we have corrected our issue of it resting on our air hose fittings, but we have created a problem where now our cup is sitting crooked, and I'd rather have it flush or level, I should say, so that when you're filling, you can have it level and fill it to the way that you want. So what I'm going to do to address this is I'm going to place a level here on my cup so I can see when my cup is level. I have a scrap of 1/2 inch diameter dowel here. I'm going to put it in where the trigger guard is, or where the trigger is here. I'm going to place it and pull it back until my cup is sitting level. And I have another level bubble here. I'm just going to place it on the dowel. And once I have everything leveled up so I know the position, I'm going to mark the dowel here on the side, take some measurements. I'll drill corresponding holes in both sides, and we will place a 1/2 inch diameter dowel right through to have a rest for our gun to sit on while we're filling. So now with that dowel in place, when you insert your HVLP gun, your cup sits nicely in that little form, and this dowel holds very firmly in this section of your trigger to sit right there like that. Clears your hoses, keeps it nice and level, and it sits there rather securely. It's not going anywhere. It can't go forward. It really can't go backwards. So at this point now, there's one last piece that I want to make for this, and that's a piece up here for the top. So I'm going to make it so that it is 5 inches wide. It will be 7 3/8 long, and we will need to drill or cut a hole rather in it. But for now, let's get the piece made. We will also have to cut a dado up here. Now this dado will be 3-inch, or a rabbet rather. We'll cut the rabbet so that it will be 3/8 of an inch wide and 3/16 of an inch deep. Well, we have our top piece cut 7 3/8 long and 5 inches wide. We've cut our rabbets here that this sits in, and what you want to do is your lower level here, you want to measure from the back end to the center of your hole. In this case, it's 2.5 inches, which works out perfectly here on our 5-inch piece because we can just mark the center. So at that point, what we want to do is we want to mark out a 4-inch diameter circle. And that circle is going to be a cutout. We're going to tilt the scroll saw blade at 45 degrees to cut this one. So I'll get that cut and I'll show you, well, what its purpose is. And with the hole cut, that top piece just fits like that. Now, when doing fly by the seat of your pants builds, it is inevitable that you are going to create problems for yourself. The product has not been tested. You have no idea if the project is going to work or not. So as you go, you end up creating and discovering problems. And it's all about how you fix them. And while the gun fits in here rather nicely, and my 1/2-inch dowel here does a great job at holding it level, keeping my air hose off of the edge of the board here, this thing was intended to be like this off the edge of my bench. So I'm not concerned that this nozzle hangs below there because it will be hooked up to an air hose. But by adding this 1/2-inch dowel, I've created a problem. And what I've created is a fulcrum where as soon as the weight of an air hose and the regulator and the filter, the air filter goes on there, I've created a fulcrum for this thing to pivot on to pull my paint gun out of its holster. So what I've done to combat that is right here at the back, I have drilled some 1/2-inch diameter holes. And I have cut some 1/2-inch dowels with a little notch in them, and those dowels will get glued into place here. And all I want to do is, it's as simple as using a rubber band. We'll come around our paint gun and hook it into our dowels. Be a lot easier when they're glued in. Just like that, and that will hold our paint gun where it needs to be. If it's not enough pressure, I'll just use a thicker rubber band, but I think that's going to hold it just fine. So at this point now, it's time to cut our tapers that we first measured when we first laid out our sides. And believe it or not, you can do this at the bandsaw, you can do it with a handsaw, you can do it however you want. I'm actually just going to take it over to the scroll saw and carefully cut along those lines on the tapers, and then we'll put this back together as a dry fit. Before I do that, I will sand all the pieces to try to make it look somewhat presentable. It is construction grade plywood, so how pretty can it be? But we're going to give all the pieces a good sanding, and from there, well, I guess we'll glue it together. Well, as it turns out, construction grade plywood cleans up pretty nicely. But here I have the whole gun. I have attached the regulator and the filter, and the hose all in line to test it for its stability. So the gun will just sit in here like this, and just like I thought, this hose really pulls this forward. So much so that I'm not going to let it go. But that rubber band that we have there can very easily pull around and attach onto those 2 1/2-inch dowels at the back, and that holds it very securely in place, just like that. So what is the purpose of this top hole here? This entire rig is meant just to hold your gun. You can hold it there in between coats. It's also, though, meant as your third set of hands for filling your reservoir with your paint. And that top hole is for your paint filter, because you should not be running your HVLP or any paint sprayer for that matter without first filtering your paint. So the 4-inch diameter hole will hold your paint filter very nicely, centered over the top of your reservoir, and you can pour your paint in. You still have one free hand in case you need to wipe up a spill or what have you. You can keep an eye on your levels, hands free, let it do its thing, let it filter, let it drain, and look, I'm not holding anything. It's not like the first time I used it, where I'm trying to juggle holding the filter, holding the gun, holding this, holding the reservoir, pouring the paint. It was crazy. So this is going to go a long way to helping with filling and with holding the gun upright while I'm in between coats. And you know what? Who knows? Maybe I'll use the HVLP and give it a
battery 60%.
Power failure. Maybe I'll give it a coat of paint is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, guys, let's get this done before the power goes out on me again. And there you have it. An HVLP spray gun stand. Guys, this project for me anyway came out of, as many projects do here on the show, it came out of necessity. And while I am fairly new to HVLP and its benefits, my first experiences with it were just crazy as far as trying to get the gun filled up. It was really awkward, and you know, it was also tough to find somewhere to place that gun in between coats. So I started looking online for stands that hold it, and I found them available for anywhere between $30 and upwards of $100. And there were more expensive ones than that, but I stopped looking. And that's when I thought, you know what, $100 for a wire frame, or even $30 for a wire frame, that's crazy. I've got all this scrap plywood that I got for free in my shop, so why not utilize it? And although mine isn't as sleek and slimline as the store-bought ones, it's solid, it serves its purpose, and it works well. Now, being a fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants build, as with many of them, you end up creating your own problems along the way. And part of the challenge and part of the fun is actually trying to overcome those challenges. So in essence, you're creating your own puzzle, you're creating your own problem, and then you have to turn around and create your own solution. There are no answers. There are no right or wrong answers. It's whatever works. So for me, by placing the gun in the uprights, I had no idea of the measurements height-wise as far as where to put the gun. So I had to figure that out. That was all holding things here, holding things there. By placing it at the level that I wanted it, it wasn't far enough in. The main shelf was too wide. So I ended up having to cut it. By ending up having to cut it, it made it so that the hose dragged on the bottom of the base, and I didn't like that. So I had to cut a notch. But then by cutting that notch, it made it so that the gun didn't sit level anymore. I couldn't fill it properly. So I had to put that 1/2-inch dowel. But the 1/2-inch dowel created a fulcrum, which pulled my gun out of the holder. And then, of course, that was brought on the 1/2-inch posts with the rubber band to hold it in. Guys, there are all kinds of problems that you can create by doing a fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants build, but it's a heck of a lot of fun trying to figure it out and play around with it. This thing took a whole day to build from start to finish because all I had in my mind was an idea. I didn't have anything down on paper. I didn't have any way that I felt it should be done. And in fact, I had a lot of different ideas until I started building it and seeing what problems they could create. And then I ended up creating more of my own. Either way, it's a rock solid unit. I really like the way that it holds everything solidly in place and frees up my hands, especially for filling that paint canister. So on that main shelf, that main hole that I did, that 2-inch diameter hole, why so small for such a large reservoir? Well, I have the Husky HVLP system, or the guns that came in a 2-gun set, both the conventional sprayer and the HVLP, but they both come with 2 different sizes of cups or canisters or reservoirs, one being a 16-inch and one being a 4-inch. So I wanted to have that hole as large as I possibly could in order to accommodate that smaller 4-ounce cup, but have it big enough that the larger 16-ounce cup could still fit in it. And it worked out really well. It holds both cups comfortably and makes them easier to fill. So hopefully you're going to see this thing on future shows. And you know what, guys? If you have a need in your shop, sometimes there is just a better alternative or even a more fun and cheaper alternative than the store-bought items that you can see that are commercially available. So don't discount trying to do it for yourself and making kind of a cool looking stand for your HVLP gun. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. It's been a lot of fun, even with the power failure. Either way, I hope you've enjoyed it. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. You click that bell and then you're not going to miss the notifications of future episodes of the program. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed the content. I hope you're going to make one of these for yourself if you are into HVLP spraying. If not, I hope you're going to take some of the lessons learned on today and maybe it'll motivate you to make your own shop jigs or projects or stands and kind of try to overcome the stigma where, oh my goodness, I'm going to make a mistake. Get in there, get dirty, and get it done. Guys, thanks so much. I hope you've enjoyed it. And more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.